Happy New Year! It is New Year's Eve. Wow, it's so good to see all of you here today. Welcome to the next reading for the Jaybefaunt channel. Today, just to let you guys know, we're going to be doing the continued reading of Assata Shakur's Autobiography. To let you guys know, I am your host, James Fauntleroy. As always, the Jaybefaunt Show is available on all major podcast platforms like Anchor, Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, so you can subscribe to me there. I'm also part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can catch me. Thank you. You can catch me on the Jaybefaunt channel on Tuesdays at 2. You can also catch me on RBN on, that got me frazzled, also on Sundays at 1 and on Tuesdays at 4 for RBN Live, as well as the Savvy and JB Show on Thursdays at 6. It's good to see you. And as always, thank you for all the people who are patrons on Patreon, Coffee, as well as members, people who send me mutual aid via various platforms, as well as all of you who've been giving me some moral support. I definitely appreciate it because it means a lot. And of course, there's a lot of us who are going through a lot. Even though today is officially the last day of the year, a lot of us have a lot of issues that we're still rummaging through, that we've gotten through this year. So I just appreciate the kind words as well as the support on this channel. And hang on. Kind of like a live show, but not live. But anyway, so anywho, yeah, so we're going to be covering the reading of Assata Shakur's autobiography, as always. And this is an interesting one. This actually goes back into her early life. So it kind of sounds like she's veering back and forth, present day. Well, not necessarily present day, but the time where she's experiencing the carceral system versus juxtapose that to what she's experiencing as a child in adolescence and growing up. And so it's like a back and forth. So it's almost like this chapter 4, is really more of a flashback, and it shows her earlier life going through adolescence and puberty and experiencing school and boys and social life. So this is actually going to be an interesting part of the book that I'm actually quite excited to get into. This is actually a short chapter, and in comparison to the rest of the chapters, the previous chapters that we read before, chapter 2 and chapter 3 were pretty long in comparison, but chapter 4 is actually kind of short. So I actually can't wait to get into it and to really dive into the experiences that she had, which is actually quite interesting. And there's actually one part in her experience that kind of hit me right in the feels, and it actually has a lot to do with me and my self-esteem growing up as a child. I'll let you know when we get there, but it actually caused me to look at myself differently growing up and have we'll get into it because I don't want to give too much away. But from what she says and her experience, yeah, I felt that. And it's not going to be too far into the chapter, so we'll get into it. But as always, good to see all of you here today. Thank you so very much. I have my tea, and after doing my readings today, JB is going to eat and take a nap because tonight at 11 p.m. I'm going to be live with Savvy as well as KRTD Media. We're going to be going over all the stories tonight that happened over the course of 2022. We're going to be talking about that. And then also at midnight, once the clock hits midnight and we're officially in 2023, the first story is about voting. Voting, whether really to stick within the Democratic Party or to leave it, electoral politics versus just leaving voting altogether. That's also going to be really interesting. But I can't wait for you guys to see this, and we're going to get into this. This is actually going to be the final reading for 2022. So, cheers. Also, I don't think she'll ever get to see this, but if she ever does, if Assata Shakur ever gets to see my streams and me reading her book, Miss Assata, solidarity and love to you. You've been through a lot, and thank you for being such a warrior. That's all I got to say. All right, man, that tea is good. Ooh. Something tastes so good, it just slaps you in the face. Yeah. Anywho, let's get into the book. All right, so chapter 4 starts on page number 71. If you have your own copy of the book, I highly recommend that you get the copy of the book. I hope she gets royalties for the sales of this book, but I don't know if she does, but I hope she does. Because, this is literally her labor. And as a socialist, I want her to get paid for her labor. I want everybody to get fair compensation for their labor. So, but let's continue on chapter 4. Junior high school has its advantages and its disadvantages. It was more impersonal and much more confusing than elementary school, but it gave me the chance to move around and change classes, which I liked. Generally, my subjects bored me, with the exception of English, history, and a newfound love of ceramics. Parsons Junior High School in Queens was mostly white. A lot of the black kids had been put into remedial or what we call dumb classes. It never ceased to amaze me that the kids were so smart in the street were always in the dumb classes. First of all, let's start off there. God, not hate, but it's just, I have to start so early, just in this chapter alone, just for some commentary. If we really taught the way kids learn, a lot of these kids that are poor and in the streets would have excelled more in school. But the problem is we don't teach the way they learn. We teach conformity, we teach compliance, and we teach obedience. And that's what's taught in school. And to just memorize things, and that's basically it. And unfortunately, because of the type of school system that we have, yeah, that's basically what it is. Compliance, conformity, and obedience. And some of these kids who are extremely bright, they get thrown by the wayside because they just can't operate within that system, which is very similar to factories as well as prisons. So then what do? Well, they don't do that well, which also affects their self-esteem, and they also can rebel, which also puts them in the crosshairs of the carceral state. Because if they can't get their profit out of you from being a good worker, then they'll get their profit out of you for being an inmate. Unfortunately, that's the way our system works. We call it the school to prison pipeline. Let's continue. In junior high, everybody was going with someone. When girls got together to talk, the subject was always boys, who was cute, who was going with whom, who was fresh, etc., etc. A cute boy was tall, slim, but well built, and usually had light skin. A boy was considered super fine if, in addition to light skin, he had funny colored eyes. Hazel and green eyes were the best. If a boy had popular or good sport or was popular or good at sports, he usually got a play. But in general, the boys we talked about were tall, not too dark, and handsome. One of my earliest admirers was this boy named Joe. He was new in our neighborhood, from down south or somewhere, because everyone said he was country. He was real dark and had a long body with short little legs. He liked me, and in the beginning, I think I kind of liked him too. Then everyone started teasing me, saying he was my boyfriend, and saying he looked like a black frog because his legs were so short. At that age, I was worried to death about what everyone thought of me. I wanted desperately to be one of the pack, and I didn't want anybody to make fun of me. So whenever anybody said I liked Joe, I would deny it to the bitter end and talk about him worse than everybody else. But Joe was very sweet to me. Every time he saw me, he would smile and say something nice. On Valentine's Day, he gave me a beautiful big Valentine and some candy. One day in the spring, I heard somebody calling my name outside my bedroom window. It was Joe. Quickly, he put a flower on the sill and ran away. Every day after that, he did the same thing. When I would see him on the street, I would smile. I was really touched by the flowers. Then one day, my mother saw him at the window putting a flower on the sill. "You tell that boy to stay away from that window," she said. "Now he's putting flowers in the window. Next thing you know, he'll be trying to climb in." But she still thought he was kind of cute. It was the next thing I knew, she was telling all her friends about it. While I was embarrassed, it also made me think I was cute. No boy had ever paid me that much attention before, and I loved it. Yeah, she knew exactly what he was about, but she was like, "Yeah, that's adorable, but make him stop." One day I was coming home from the store and I saw Joe. He started walking beside me. He was kind of shy and he had never said anything to me except, "You look nice," or "You look pretty." This day we tried to make conversation as we went along. Then all of a sudden he said, "Will you go out with me? I want you to be my girl." Somehow I was shocked. Did he really think I would go out with him and ruin my reputation forever? "No," I answered. "No," he repeated. "Why not?" I didn't know what to say. My tongue became heavy and twisted. I started to stutter. Nothing came out of my mouth. "Why not?" he asked again. I stammered and stuttered, and then, with icy bluntness, I said, "Because you're too black and ugly." I will never forget the look on his face. He looked at me with such cold hatred that I was stunned. I was instantly sorry for what I had said, but there was no taking it back. He looked at me as if he despised me more than anyone else on the face of the earth. I felt so ugly and dirty and depraved. I was shaken to the bone for weeks, maybe months afterward. I was haunted by what happened that day, by the snakes that had crawled out of my mouth. The sneering hatred on his face every time I saw him after that made me know that there was nothing I could do to make it up to him. There was nothing I could do but change myself. Not for him, but for me. And I did change. After that, I never said black and ugly in the same sentence and never thought it. Of course, I couldn't undo all the years of self-hatred and brainwashing in that short time, but it was a beginning. And although I still cared too much about what people thought about me, I always tried hard after that to stand on my own 2 feet and stand by what I felt and thought and not just be a robot. I didn't always succeed, but I always tried like hell. Mm. White supremacy is a motherfucker. It influences us so much to the point where blackness is deemed as ugly. And the darker you are, the more unattractive you are perceived to be. So even then, it may push even kids to treat someone else who's of a darker complexion like they're less than, just to be able to please others. Unfortunately, this sentiment didn't change when I was a little kid. It's funny. Well, not funny. It's interesting that this still continued even when I was little. And I used to think of myself as ugly. Oh, I hated it. I hated my skin color. I couldn't stand it. I hated being darker. I thought I deemed myself as unattractive. To the point where even guys that were dark skinned, as a young gay boy growing up, I thought dark skinned guys were unattractive because I thought I was unattractive. Yeah. And so, unless you were lighter than me, I wasn't even looking your way. And so, it reflected what I thought about myself. And of course, the light skinned boy was deemed as the most attractive, especially in the 80s and early 90s. Yeah. So it does affect you deeply by how people perceive you and how people treat you. And even the talks about good hair, bad hair, right? And the funny part was everybody looked at me in shock, like, oh my God, you're dark skinned, but you have good hair. And I always start with her, oh, I have good hair, even though I'm darker. Some people thought I had some type of ethnic, according to black people, some exotic trait in me. Somebody that's from an island somewhere, or, you know. And so it does definitely affect your self-esteem. And so the fact that this affected Assata so much, that how she transgressed against this boy, it affected her years later, and it changed her behavior and how she perceives people. And in that sense, because of how she felt, she made it her business to do that work of decolonizing her mind. funny part is now I don't view my skin color as unattractive. Hell, now I also see dark-skinned men as also very attractive. So really, no shade of man is they're not safe from me anymore. You can be dark as dark from like the Congo. You can be as white and alabaster like you're from Iceland, and all in between. I still think you're beautiful because I don't find myself unattractive like that anymore. But it took work. It took a lot of work. But see, that's what white supremacy does. It makes you feel less than so that other people will feel like they're better than you. When really, that's not the case. You're not less than. You never will be less than unless you treat people in a horrible way and you don't try to fix it. So yeah, that hit me hard. That really hit me. So let's get back to the book. Mostly, when I was young, the news didn't seem real. In fact, my vision of the world was like a comic strip. In China, they ate fortune cookies and the men wore braids. In Africa, they lived in huts, wore bones in their noses, and were cannibals. In South America, they wore big hats, sombreros, slept in the middle of the day, and drank a lot of rum and danced the cha-cha. The only place besides the United States that I could talk about with anything resembling realism was Europe. And my perception of Europe was almost as unreal. The first president I remember was Eisenhower, and even he didn't seem real. My mother said that all he did was play golf. When he did give a speech on TV, we turned the channel. And if he was on all the stations, we turned the TV off. To all you who are younger in this, who are watching, there was 3 channels on TV. That was it. You had CBS, NBC, and ABC. That was it. Only 3 channels back in the day. Up until the late 80s, then you had Fox, so it was 4. Besides, if you didn't have cable. And I think cable didn't even come in until the late 70s, early 80s. So around this time, 3 channels. 1, 2, 3. That's it. So, yeah. So, you change the channel, president's on. If he's on all the channels, that means all 3. Good luck. You just have to turn the TV off. Pick up a book. Only the news concerning black people made any impact at all on me. And it seemed that each year the news got worse. The first of the really bad news that I remember was Montgomery, Alabama. That was the first I heard of Martin Luther King. Rosa Parks had been arrested for refusing to give her seat to a white woman. The black people had boycotted the buses. It was a nasty struggle. Black people were harassed and attacked, and if I remember correctly, Martin Luther King's house was bombed. Then came Little Rock. I can still remember those ugly, terrifying white mobs attacking those little children who were close to my own age. When the news about Little Rock came on, you could hear a pin drop at my house. We would all sit there horrified. Sometimes, afterward, somebody would say something, but usually, we would just sit there lost in our own thoughts. I guess there was nothing to say. And each year, I would sit in front of that box, watching my people being attacked by white mobs, being bitten by dogs, beaten and water hosed by police, arrested and murdered. Then, the news seemed too real. Think about what happened during the George Floyd protests, right? How you were constantly seeing protesters, peaceful protesters, being beaten by cops, run over by their squad cars, being gassed, and having flash bags thrown at them, all for peacefully protesting because they were against police brutality. The more things change, the more they stay the same, baby. The older I got, the more I seemed to grow into myself. My mother and stepfather were having all kinds of problems. They were fussing and fighting like cats and dogs. They were like a whole lot. They were like a whole lot of other black people in that respect. They were catching hell every day on their jobs in society, and they took their frustrations out on each other. To make matters worse, she was a teacher, and he had worked at a post office. She had been to college, and he hadn't. As far as I'm concerned, if a black man and woman make a marriage work in America, they've accomplished a miracle because everything is against them. Being poor is just one of their biggest obstacles. Most of the arguments are about money. It is hard as hell to be loving and caring when you can't pay the bills or you don't know where your next dollar is coming from. And the way that we're brought up to think adds insult to injury. It's changing a little bit now, but when I was growing up, every white man on television was able to support his family with no particular strain. There was no need for his wife to work. Her job was to stay home and take care of the kids. Black people accepted those role models for themselves, even though they had very little to do with the reality of their own existence and survival. Look, I know I'm stopping a lot, but this is also a really important point. What is one of the primary reasons people are ending their marriages and divorce today? Is that because of financial reasons? Arguments and disagreements over money, right? I'm not saying that that's the primary source, but that's one of the biggest contributing factors. Now, think about, let me ask you this question. If the threat of poverty, homelessness, was not a factor, if we had a nationalized healthcare system where people could get mental health checks and even counseling, family counseling, marriage counseling, without having to pay out of pocket, how many more marriages do you think would succeed in our country? How many more do you think, if you didn't have to worry about losing your home, if you didn't have to worry about food, right? The basic necessities. If you could get an education just like everybody else, without having to worry about coming out of pocket, how much more would it be able to just deal with the other social and personality issues between you and your mate and work past that and work through it? Imagine how many stress triggers would be alleviated if we got rid of these diseases of despair. Just think about it. An egalitarian society will be good for families. Ending capitalism actually will save marriages. Because then we won't have to end these marriages because of financial constraints. That won't be one of the major contributing factors to it. I'm not saying that they still won't end, but taking one of those major contributing factors could lessen the overall amount. families would still be together if we didn't have to deal with capitalism, and if we actually had housing for all, if we had food as a right, housing as a right, healthcare as a right. Just think about it. Interesting, right? And then the point talking about how back in the day, white families, a lot of white families, they only had to deal with just one breadwinner in the house, and they only needed one income to take care of themselves. That wasn't in black families. No, 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 no. Mama and daddy both had to work. And if mama was single, or if daddy was single, it was even harder. So even though they wanted that lifestyle and they tried to push for that lifestyle, black people were living more economically modern times than white people were. And now white people are working both parents of the household. Some white people were working multiple jobs. We were doing that back when a lot of white people only had a single income household. Always remember this. When it comes to our socioeconomic status, black people are the canaries in the coal mine. And if it's happening to us, it's going to eventually happen to you. Watch this space. While my parents were going through their changes, I was going through mine. I was at the age where I questioned everything. The world was beginning to have more and more impact on me. I was curious about and wanted to experience everything. One week at the library, on weekends, whenever I could, I would take off. I went to the movies or to the library, but my favorite activity was riding subways and buses. I would hop on any subway or bus, ride until I got tired, then got off at any stop and walk around. Sometimes I walked to people or play handball. Sometimes I talked to people or played handball with kids my age. Other times, I just walked and looked around. I just walked and looked. I went to all kinds of neighborhoods, white, black, Puerto Rican, Chinatown too. But Harlem was my favorite place. I was fascinated by street life. I was always trying to figure out what was going on. Everything was so colorful and busy. Men standing on the corner drinking, boys playing basketball, hustlers buzzing up and down the streets, huddling and making deals. It was a land of dream books, kitchenettes, and Johnny Walker Red. I loved the stores, from the market on Park Avenue to the greasy fish joints, to the candy stores that sold penny candy and penny cigarettes, and God knows what else. I would walk and look and think. The world for me then was a big question mark. And the biggest question of all was where I fit in. I was always late getting home and in trouble. Streetlights, baby. It was like I had some kind of disease. I could never make it home on time. I would leave with the best intentions, but as soon as I got out in the street, it was as if I was in a trance. I would forget about all the time until it was too late. And half the time, when I realized it was getting dark, I didn't even know where I was, much less how to get home. My mother would talk to me, slap me, shake me, punish me, but nothing worked. I was a lost cause. I was running away from home and I didn't even know it. And one thing always led to another. I was turning into a fantastic liar. As soon as I got near home, I began making up lies. Excuse me. When I look back at it now, I know my mother must have wanted to choke me when she heard those far-fetched creations. But at the time, I thought they were brilliant. As the problems in my family intensified, I ran away consciously instead of unconsciously. The first time I ran away, I went to Evelyn's house. She wasn't home, so I fell asleep on the stairway. When she came home, she thought I was some kind of drunken bum, so she walked by me and went to her apartment. I came back the next day and she talked to me, played shrink and family counselor, and sent me home. It worked for a while, but things were a mess. My mother and I couldn't see eye to eye about anything, and I was just as stubborn and self-willed as she was. And even when I tried to do right, it would just seem like I couldn't do anything that made her happy. And when my mother and stepfather were at each other's throats, it drove me wild. I would simply get my coat and walk out. Some days, I just didn't come back. At times, running away was fun and exciting. At other times, it was miserable, cold, and lonely. The part I dug about it, though, was surviving. Being out there, face to face with the raunchiest side of life, was like living on a roller coaster, everything hurling itself at you at breakneck speed. It was one hell of an education, and when I think about it, I was one lucky child. So many things could have happened to me. It almost did. The first time I ran away, I had just the clothes on my back and very little money. I rode the subway and slept in the hallways until I just couldn't take it anymore. Then I started talking to people. One of the first people I met was this boy named David. I told him that my mother was in the hospital and I didn't have any other family in New York, and I was scared to stay at home alone. He took me home to his mother's house, and we told his mother the same story. She said it would be okay for me to spend the night. They lived in the Farragut projects in Brooklyn. David took me out and introduced me to all his friends. We got along fine until nighttime. Then it was war, an all-out wrestling match. When he wasn't attacking me, he was begging and pleading and thinking up 1,000 arguments why I should give him some. Boys, I tell you. I told him I was afraid of getting pregnant. This trifling motherfucker. He went and got his big jar of Vaseline. Of course he had a jar of Vaseline. He went and got this big jar of Vaseline and told me that if you use Vaseline, you couldn't get pregnant. Now this motherfucker did the same. If you use Vaseline, you couldn't get pregnant. That is... She said, I was dumb, but not that dumb. I told him to go to hell, and the wrestling match continued. A day or two after Davis, I was ready to move on. Besides, his mother was getting suspicious. You think? That boy was trying to get a little cookie, and he said if you use Vaseline, you won't get pregnant. Can you smell that? That's some bullshit. See, this is why it's important to have sex education. You see why? Because this stuff can happen to kids. They get together and then they don't know what really goes on, and next thing you know, boom. Wow. My next new friend was a girl. I couldn't take any more Davids. Tina lived in Fort Greene section of Brooklyn with her mother and her brother in a brownstone house. It was a rickety old house, and half of it looked like it was condemned. There was nothing whatsoever in that house that was orderly. There were rooms with all kinds of junk in them, stacked almost to the ceiling. Tables, chairs, record players, old radios. I thought the same old I told the same old story to Tina's mother, and she was sweet as pie. I could stay there just as long as I wanted, she said. In fact, she said she just loved to have young people around her. And she wasn't lying either. All day long there was a procession of people in and out of that house, and most of them were young. When Tina's mother saw that I didn't have any clothes, she said, well, we'll just just had to take you shopping. I remember thinking how nice she was to be willing to spend money on me, a stranger. The next morning, we went down to Fulton Street. All right, she told me. Now I want you to go with Tina into A&S and pick out what you want. I'll be here at the soda place. Just remember where everything is. Off we went, Tina and I. I was happy as a jaybird. My clothes were kind of on the funky side. When we got inside the store, I started to pick up things and got ready to try them on. Be cool, said Tina. Don't you know what size you wear? Yeah, I said. Why? Let's just get the stuff here and let's just get the stuff and get out of here. If you like something, just say so. Don't go picking it up and putting it on and carrying it on. Okay, I said, thinking that she was strange. I like the plaid kilt, the big safety pin, and a blouse and sweater to match. This will go with that too, Tina said, pointing to a white blouse. Now you just do what I tell you. Step in this. Step in what? I said, looking down. Be cool, fool, Tina whispered. Just keep looking ahead and help me pull this thing up. She said she had already got half the skirt up around my thighs. Finally, we got the skirt up and fastened under my own skirt. Okay, let's get out of here, Tina said. Wait a minute. Pull that skirt up. It's hanging down. And don't look down. I was scared out of my wits, but I started to roll. Not your skirt, fool, Tina whispered. The one underneath. Well, I was walking and rolling and trying to look cool, and if anyone had seen me, I know I must look like a slapstick comedy. But somehow we made it out of there. I expected the police to come swooping down on us at any moment. Tina's mother was still sitting at the same place, sipping on soda. How'd it go? She asked Tina. She's okay, Tina said. She don't know nothing, but she was cool. I felt like fainting. Everybody else's mother, I knew, would have knocked you down if they ever thought you were stealing. This was surely something new. I just kept staring at Tina's mother. She must have seen me staring at her too, because she told me, that's right, I steal and my kids steal too. They trying to take my house from me, trying to take everything I got. I got to survive by the best way I know how. But it ain't really stealing, it's just a discount. You need a discount, high as these stores is. We call it a 5-finger discount. And she started laughing. When we got to the house, she said, all right, let's see all from the pretty clothes you got. Tina took the blouses and sweater from somewhere, and I took the skirt from under my skirt. That's all you got? Yeah, said Tina. She don't know how to do nothing. And we was taking too long. Y'all didn't get no underwear? Tina's mother asked. No. Well, here, she said, giving us some money. Go to the 5 and dime and buy some. Now, I don't want y'all taking nothing y'all didn't hear. I didn't raise no nickel and dime store kids, understand? Yes, and we were gone. We're going to teach you how to deal, Tina said on the way from the store. I just looked at her. My mind was spinning. Then I started to feel glad about it. We had gotten over. We had gotten over tough. The idea of a 5-finger discount was beginning to appeal to me, and it was easy as hell. Stop me right there for a second. You heard what Tina's mom said? Number one, the storage is too expensive. Number two, they're trying to take her house away from her. She said I have to survive by the best way I know how. Let me ask you this. If somebody has everything they need, right? They have food, clothing, shelter, everything they need, right? They don't have to worry about paying housing, insecure, things like that. And they make a living wage. What's the likelihood of that person going to steal? Now, do some people who do have money still steal? Yeah. They do. But how often is it? Not that often. Because they don't need to do it to survive. So guess what? They do it to survive. Especially a lot of black people. A lot of poor people. Or poor white people do it too. They still survive. Unfortunately, that's the system we live in. And if anything is, people don't realize that we get stolen from all the time too. Corporations steal from us. They steal us, money from our checks, and the hours we work, all that. So yeah. That night, I dressed up in my new clothes and went with Tina and her brother to hang out. He was on the quiet side and evil looking, but he turned out to be nice. We were going to a party at Fort Greene Projects. We stopped and brought some French fries and Thunderbird. At the party, Tina introduced me to Tyrone. It was love at first sight. I thought he was the cutest boy I'd ever seen. Tyrone was the warlord of the Fort Greene chaplains, and I thought it was just so romantic, like West Side Story. We sat in the hallway drinking wine and smoking cigarettes. I had smoked before, but I had never drunk any wine. The music was playing, the lights were down low, and I was feeling good. They were playing those old slow sides like Wind and Gloria. In the still of the night, in the still of the night. Sunday kind of love. We went inside, started to dance. I was in love and dancing on clouds, whirling around the dance floor. I was whirling and spinning. All of a sudden, I was outside holding on to some bitch for dear life, drunk as a skunk and sick as a dog. When I was finally able to stand, Tyrone walked me to Tina's house. We held hands all the way, and he made a big deal out of kissing me goodnight. Although, I'll never understand how he could stand my vomit-tasting mouth. I woke up the next morning feeling like elephants had been doing Watusi on my forehead, and like I was walking on my eyelids. Tina's mother wanted me to go someplace with her. I got up, washed, and got dressed. What kind of jewelry do you like? She asked me. I don't know, I said. I guess I like rubies because they're my birthstone. Oh no! You look like you look like a girl that's made strictly for diamonds. Really? I asked, flattered. Oh yeah, diamonds are a girl's best friend, and I'm gonna show you how to get some. She spent the morning and most of the afternoon showing me just how to do that. You have nothing to worry about, she kept telling me. Even if they catch you, they can't do nothing to you. You're a kid. I was supposed to go into a store and talk very proper. I was asked the price of I was I was to ask the price of everything and tell the clerk that my father gave me $80 to spend, but that I had some money of my own. Tina and her brother would come in and create a diversion, and while everyone was looking at them, I was to put the biggest earrings I could get in my mouth under my tongue. I was to say something to the salesman and walk calmly out of the store. There were a few more parts to the plan, but I don't remember them. She had me practice talking with things under my tongue. That's kind of hard. When we got to the store, I thought I was going to die of fright. I acted like I didn't know Tina and her brother and went in as planned. The store was pretty crowded, and I went into my act. I was so scared. I felt like I was having hot flashes. At first, the salesman acted like he didn't want to show me anything, but then when I told him about the $80 and my extra money, he hurried up and pulled out trays. I held them up, saying, "Do you think she'll like these? Do you think she'll like these better?" Then, all of a sudden, Tina and her brother came running into the store. They were laughing real loud and chasing and grabbing each other. I almost forgot what I was supposed to do because I was so busy watching them. Then I remember, and when I saw that no one was watching, I picked up the biggest earrings I saw and put them into my mouth. I don't see anything mommy would really like, I said. Maybe I'll come back later. Started walking to the store. I just knew that man was going to call me back. Miss, someone called. I felt like dropping to the floor. I looked out the corner of my eye and saw that it was another salesman calling someone else. I walked out of the store, turned the corner, and ran. I was halfway to Tina's house before they caught up with me. The earrings were still in my mouth. Did you get it? Tina asked me. I looked at her almost as if I didn't know her. Did you cop or not? I asked again, impatiently. She asked again impatiently. Finally, I spit the earrings out into my hand. Shit, said Tina's mother. There's some pretty numbers there. I like them myself. As it turned out, the earrings were pierced ears, and my ears weren't pierced. Selling them to me, Tina's mother said, I'll give you $20 for them. It's a deal, I told her. I was glad to get $20. I didn't care about no diamond earrings, and I needed some money to get away to try to find a job. I was convinced that I wasn't cut out to be no thief. That night, we went out to celebrate. Tina's mother had given me $20 plus $2 extra for good work, and she had been giving me a pretty cool gold-colored dress and nice black shoes. I was dressed up and clean as a board of health, and we went and had some money in our pockets, and we were ready to do it. That phrase, cleaner than the board of health, yeah. I don't know if they say that down here in the South, but up north, yeah. Even my mom still says that. Yeah. Like when you clean up real nice, you cleaner than the board of health. Man. We looked for Tyrone, but he wasn't home. We walked all around the projects until we found him. He was at the house of one of these twins, Jesse and James, or something like that. They all went downstairs for some kind of meeting. Everybody said that they were going to fight. They were at a war with another gangs, the bishops, and one of the members had got messed up by the bishops. Finally, the meeting was over and Tyrone came and hung out with us. But it wasn't the same. He spent the whole night talking about what he was going to do to the bishops. And if he wasn't talking about that, he was talking about the fights he had before. Gang fights, school fights, fight fights, etc. It seemed like his whole life was fighting. Why, I kept thinking. Why was he so into fighting? The question was on the tip of my tongue, but I just couldn't bring myself to ask it. I tried to imagine the future, Mrs. Tyrone, whatever his name was, and the children. Me, packing his lunch as he went out to fight the bishops. Somehow, the picture didn't work. I was tired of this adventure. I was ready to go home, whatever the consequences. That's chapter 4. Whew. That was interesting, right? Man. Growing up, man, especially that adolescent stage. You know, kids, they got to go out and go all over the city and hang out and do stuff. You know, the older we got, the more we had to stay closer to home. Our proximity to home had to stay closer and closer. Especially when it got dark. You know, street lights came on, you're behind. Better had been in the house. I remember me and my brother going out on adventures around the neighborhood. We didn't stick home. Especially boys. Yeah, we were all up and down the neighborhoods. I think there was a double standard for girls, but some girls, they got to roam too, but not a lot. But that was interesting. And it just goes to show how we're influenced by the societal pressures of capitalism, you know, and how it continuously perpetuates Eurocentric standards, beauty standards, like what she was talking about earlier, when she told Joe that she thought he was too black and ugly. And then when you get into the austerity, poverty, how it influences us to do things like theft and stealing. Theft, really? I have to put it in air quotes because really the system failed Tina and her mom and her brother. And so to survive, they had to steal. And so that can also have an influence on people as they grow up. So really, it just societally, economically, it just does a number on us. And a lot of times people just don't realize. And then some people who are of a better socioeconomic status will think less of us because of the systems that we were subject to. But the problem is the system. If we didn't have to deal with the system being the way it is, then sometimes these hard choices wouldn't have been made. It's just like some people look at people who deal drugs, in the hood especially, as terrible. But the question is, what else are they supposed to do? Especially when they need money quick and a quick fix. Especially if you don't have a bank account, because guess what? Where are you going to cash your check at? Oh, well, you have to go to a check cashing place. But then they take more money from you. See what I mean? And so some people actually have to use these destructive means in order to survive because the system is destructive upon them. So really the goal is to change the system so that people won't have to do these things and make these choices ever again. And this obviously had a bearing on Assata's upbringing. How has that affected you back in the day? Like, did you ever have to experience that growing up? Eurocentric beauty standards, the austerity that was placed upon you and your family. How did that affect you? Did it affect did it have an effect on you, or did you grow up more solidly middle class, upper middle class? Did you grow up more affluent? How did it affect you? Are you white and you didn't have to face this? I'm curious. But yeah, that was it. Chapter 5 starts on page 80. So we'll be getting into that at the start of the new year. So that was a pretty short chapter for chapter 4. Stay tuned also for Dirty Truths by Michael Parenti. I'll be reading that as well. So if you guys want to get into that, we're in the final chapter of Dirty Truths by Michael Parenti. This is also chapter 5, and we'll be getting into miscellany and memorabilia. So this is going to be an interesting chapter. And chapter 5, part 1, we're going to be starting off with that. So, thank you to everybody. Did you like the stream? Did you? Make sure to like the stream. Now, why do we always bring this up? Because we know that the algorithm does not like us. It is against us. It's more pro-corporate. And so because the algorithm is more pro-corporate, people like myself and many other independent media commentators and journalists do not get that push. And so it's up to you to do the push, to do the like, to do the subscribe, to share, because honestly, that's how we grow in number. That's how we get to expand the message out there. And some of us, we are just the messengers so that people can learn more. And I do this to encourage more encourages growth to you as well as other people who may be within your circle who may be interested. And so that's what it's all about. Socialism is going to happen, but how fast that happens is up to us. So yeah. So I just want to thank you guys for watching. Also, thank you to all the patrons on Coffee, Patreon, as well as members, anybody who's sending me mutual aid via the various platforms. I want to thank you for, if this is going to be your final viewing of my channel for 2022, Happy New Year! And if you guys are going to be not, if this is not, then stay tuned for Dirty Tunes by Michael Parenti. That should be up in a little bit. But I just want to thank you guys for watching. Stay safe and stay dangerous. Reading is fundamental. Forehead kisses to all of you. And another forehead kiss. Just because if you're reading at midnight,